Thank you for joining us for today's message. We believe we can go anywhere in the world from right here in Marque, Texas, and reach people just like you. If you'd like more information about Abundant Life, please visit ALCC.org. You can also text the number below if you would like to support the church financially. Be ready for a powerful message that's going to impact your life. Good to see you tonight. This is twice this year for me to be in big church, is what we call it. John chapter 21, if you have your Bible, if you would open it this evening. John chapter 21, beginning in verse 1. We're going to talk this evening a little bit about relationship that we have with our Heavenly Father, one that we have with friends and with family. How many of you are married in here? Let me see, just wave your hand. Wonderful. Anybody engaged in here, about to be married? Nice, couple people. How many of you have been married 1 year? 5 years plus? 10 years plus? 20 years plus? Woo! 30 years plus? Oh man, 40? Hey! 50? 50 years. Anybody at 50? Wonderful. Give them a great big hand. Congratulations. 50 years. How many? 59. Wow.
Let's go.
Wow. Relationship goals right there. 59 years. That's fantastic. We have not been married for 59 years. He looks like he's 59 with his hair now.
Let's go.
John chapter 21 and verse 1, it says, "After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. Now this is how he did so. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples of his were together. And Simon Peter told them, 'I'm going fishing.' 'We will go with you,' they replied. And they went out and they got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing." Not a good night, right, for a fisherman. I went fishing twice, I think, 3 times with my grandparents, who were amazing fishermen, right? My grandma could outfish anybody. And I caught like weeds and grass and things. And I was like, this is just not for me, right? I'll just sit out on the lake and look pretty. And when it was already very early in the morning, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. And so Jesus said to them, "Children, you don't have any fish, do you?" And they replied, "No." And he told them, "Throw your net on the right side." Come on, say the right side.
Right side.
Anytime Jesus tells you to do something, it's the right way,
That's right?
We should just go with it. "Throw it on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they threw the net and were not able to pull it in because of the large number of fish. And then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." And so Simon Peter, when he heard that it was the Lord, tucked in his outer garment, and he plunged into the sea. And meanwhile, the other disciples came with the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, only about 100 yards. And when they got out on the beach, they saw a charcoal fire ready with a fish placed on it and bread. And Jesus said, "Bring some of the fish that you've caught just now." And Simon Peter went aboard. He pulled the net to shore, and it was full of large fish, 153. But although they were so many, the net had not torn. "Come have breakfast," Jesus said. But none of the disciples dared ask, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. And Jesus came, he took the bread, gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. And this now was the 3rd time Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead.
Man, I love that. I like that it says that he said, toss the net on the right side. It means they've been throwing the net on the wrong side.
Right.
Now, I know he was saying not the left, the right, but how many of y'all know sometimes it seems like you're doing the work all day long and you're not getting the results that you were expecting. You're not getting the answers that you want. Maybe you've been throwing the net on the wrong side.
Right.
And Jesus said, throw it on the right side. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about being on the right side. The right side of your marriage, the right side of your dating relationship, the right side of your relationship with the kids, the right side. Because there is a wrong side, but we're believing God to be on the right side. Hit your neighbor and say, be on the right side.
Be on the right side.
You know, it's interesting because we look at the sides of the easiest thing I can equate it to is the sides of a story, right? We all have our own side of every story. We were trying to think today of a story or some disagreement we've had where we both took a side and really dug in deep, and we couldn't really think of anything great because we've really modeled our marriage and made our marriage something that we compromise pretty easily. We made a decision when we first got married that we weren't going to yell at each other, we weren't going to throw plates, we weren't going to cuss one another out, we weren't going to bust holes in the walls. I like to tell people we've never broke a plate in our house for a couple of reasons. Somebody told me today it's because y'all use plastic plates, but I mean, that's maybe true, but no, that's not the reason. There's two reasons. Number one, because then I'd have to go buy new plates. I'm not interested in buying more plates. We've got plenty, and I'd have to clean up the mess. Like, there's nothing worse than being upset doing something and then having to pick up the pieces of being upset. It's just not worth it to me. But so we were trying to think of something, and I was just kind of laughing because I think that I'm the easiest human being to buy gifts for. I feel like I'm a great gift giver. I love to give gifts, and I think I buy good gifts for people. I think I do. I don't know. But I think I'm the easiest person to give gifts to because I lay out exactly what I want. I tell Heather, I will send her links on the internet to the exact item I want. I make a list, and I print it out with pictures so that when Christmas comes, I'm not surprised. I want to get what I want. It's the kind of person I am. And so a few years ago, I'm opening up Christmas presents, and she had got me a pair of jeans that there's no way in the history of the universe I would ever wear these jeans.
Can I just interject and say thank you and say that year I did not get this specified list. I think it was following this purchase that I started getting this kind of list that he is in reference to. And I've never bought a bad gift either.
So it was the worst pair of jeans in the world. And I looked at him and I was like, I'm trying to be gracious. And I looked and I was like, what? I couldn't even help myself. I was like, there's no way I'm wearing these jeans. I said, I can't do it. And she was like, I thought they looked so cool. And I was like, this doesn't look like anything I would wear. And it would be like buying a cowboy a pair of bell bottoms. Like, you don't do that, right? That's what it was the worst jeans ever. And I was just like, I can't believe that this is the present that I was so surprised and so excited, and then I got those jeans, and
I even tried to re-gift it to one of his friends, and
they wouldn't take them because they were that bad. They were terrible. So, but how many of y'all know we all have our own side of the story? Like, if I'm telling you my side, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell you how great I am, just like I did. I'm going to tell you how easy I am to shop for. I'm going to tell you how perfect my lists look. And I'm going to make her sound like a lunatic for not following the rules, right? But that's what we do in relationships. When we get into an argument, we see our side of the story, and we see where we're right and they're wrong. And so I love when and I don't do a ton of counseling, but I love when a couple comes into counsel and I've already talked to one of the two of them, because usually I hear one side of the story before I hear the other. And so I've heard generally the guy's side of the story, and then when they come in together and now the wife is telling me what's really going on, I'm like, wait a second, this is the exact opposite of what we've been talking about. And so it's interesting to me to find that there's always one side of the story and there's always the other side of the story. And so often what we do is we can easily spot in relationships, and that's what we're talking about tonight. We can easily spot the inadequacies of the person that we're with. It's easy to find the faults in the person that you're with, but watch this, we're blind to our own problems. We're blind to our own issues. Because why? We're perfect, but they got some work to do. How many of y'all know that's the way it works? Like, I'm perfect, you need to change to be more like me. Where she's the opposite. She's like, no, you need to change to be more like a normal human being. You know what I mean? Like, that's the way life is. And so we get stuck in these ruts of trying to outdo one another and trying to make my way the right way. But the reality is there's not a my way in a relationship. There shouldn't be a my way. There should be an our way. And that's what we're going to talk about. And I think, one of the best examples I can give you is, I'm a golfer. I'm not a great golfer, but I play okay. And my putting used to be really terrible because I would walk up to the ball, I would look at the line, and I would putt, and then sometimes the ball would drop, sometimes it wouldn't. And so, but what I've done is I've read more and I've studied more about great players. And if you watch, man, you can watch these guys on TV. I was watching Tiger last night on television, And he'll be looking at a 4-foot putt that he can make with his eyes closed behind the bag. That dude's great. But what he'll do is he'll look at it behind the ball, and then I love it because he walks to the other side of the hole. And he'll look at the line from the other side. Why? Because the ball may break different from another point of view. And watch that. Sometimes in our relationships, the most important thing you can do is step out of your own perspective, step out of your own line of sight and say, look, this is the way I see our relationship. This is the way I see our life. This is the way I see our issues. But watch, what would happen if you stepped out of your perspective and went to the other side of the hole and said, maybe I don't see everything. What do you see? What do you think about it? Where am I missing this? Watch, because in our relationship, we don't want that ball when you're putting to break in the wrong place. And in my relationship, I want to look at it from every angle so my relationship doesn't break in the wrong place.
You know, I've been very fortunate to see, Pastor and Miss Cindy are my parents, and to be able to watch a relationship for over 40 years. And something that, even after being married, and I have wonderful in-laws, Rod and Becky, and seeing these two relationships that are obviously very close. You have relationships that you're close to in your family, with your friends, but people who don't fight, who don't argue, who don't have to prove a point, who don't have to be right every single time, no matter if the other person is right or wrong. And they've learned, it's been a great example for Joshua and I, because they've learned how to get to the other side.
Right.
They've learned that it's okay to sometimes just disagree.
Yeah.
We agree to disagree, right, on things that aren't life-changing or altering my relationship, but they've learned how to get to the other side. And if we can learn to do that as individuals, first with our relationship with God.
Sure.
Because that's number one. And if he's the center of what we're doing, then life itself, and friendship and marriage and dating somebody, all of those things, they seem to come a whole lot easier when we keep Jesus first.
Right.
And then when we have those godly examples that are around us that are showing us how to get to the other side of things, listen, you don't have to experience everything in a bad way. How about you experience some things in a positive way,
right,
and just take that for yourself,
that's
and take
right,
ownership of that in your life.
That's good.
So many times we think experience and getting to the other side and learning another way means that we have to go to the school of hard knocks.
Right. No.
But it really doesn't. Sometimes there's that other kind of experience that, I don't know about you, but I prefer that, right? I don't want to be the one who's all beat up and beat down in life. I would rather learn some other ways. And if you get to that place, or maybe you've had that rough go, guess what? God heals,
Absolutely,
right? God restores,
That's
God
right,
helps, and you can learn from those moments and just keep moving forward. But when Jesus is talking to these guys and he says, go cast your nets on the right side, right? Get to the right place, go to the other side. He's saying, look, there's a better way.
That's right.
There's another way that this can be done. And I love that it happened at Jesus' words. Did you know that in your relationship, if you're facing some struggles, right? If there's that one thing that you and your spouse just cannot get beyond, how about you find out what God says?
That's right. That's good.
And let Jesus' word
good.
be the
Yeah,
deciding factor. Let that be the thing that you base that argument, that conversation, right? Let's not call it an argument. Let's call it a discussion. Right. Even if it's a prolonged, heated one, right? What if Jesus' words?
Yeah.
What if what he says to you in prayer? What if what God says to you in studying the word is like, oh, and it may be that it checks you.
That's it.
And it says, hey, you're the one that needs to get to the other side.
Yeah.
When that's not always the answer we want to hear, right? I've been there before. Shut your mouth, Catherine. Say
Amen.
you're sorry, right? Those are the things like, man, I need to go back and pray a little harder, because I think the wrong name came out, Jesus, when you were talking to me, right? Anybody else ever been there before? But we got to be willing to get to the other side. Jesus gave his life so that this vertical relationship could be fixed, right?
right, yeah.
God and man, so that we could have that relationship with him. So let's take advantage of that relationship and use it to fix all of these horizontal
good.
ones right
That's
here.
good. That's
use
good.
it to mend those things that are
Right.
hurting in our life. Use it to build greater ones with your spouse.
That's right.
Use it to create family, right?
That's
Not
good.
just relationship. You're not just a couple.
Yeah.
You're a family.
That's right.
It's a God union. That's something that God has put together. And when God puts it together, situations in life can't shift it unless we give it the okay to do so. Right? But when God's word is the one that you're constantly infusing that relationship with, it's really easy to get to the other side. I've shared this example before, probably more in youth church than in any place when we've talked about relationship stuff. But one of the things I remember when Joshua and I got married, I am extremely detail-oriented. And I know you've heard Pastor tell stories about a trash can at a 90-degree angle and all this. I mean, it's true. It's true. He's not exaggerating, right? I am extremely detail-oriented. Joshua is a big picture kind of person, right? He's like, the closet's there. Cool. The clothes are in it. Are they hung up? No, right? Are the shoes on the rack? No, but they landed in a closet space.
That's it.
Now mine are like color-coded, heel size, coming from the highest to the lowest. We got everything worked out over there. And he's like, why? What does this matter, right? But it's a big deal to me. So that obviously gets over into everything in my life. One of the things is toothpaste. Some people squeeze the tube from the middle. You just, wherever you can grab and go, as long as it lands on the brush and gets into your mouth, thank you, Jesus, right? But for me, see, it messes up the top of the thing. You can't close the cap on it. So you got to squeeze it from the bottom. All right? Middle, bottom.
I mean, I feel like you're lucky that I'm not using your toothbrush. Like,
That is true.
I mean, if we're being real.
So let's talk about getting to the other side. When we got married, I was an extremely high energy person, and if that thing was not squeezed from the bottom, it would ruin my morning. And so you know what I decided? Toothpaste is like $2, 2 tubes.
Yeah.
Squeeze it wherever you want to squeeze it, as hard as you want to go. And I'm going to roll it up from the bottom, right? Get to the other side.
That's good.
Get to the other side. Now that's a really simple example, but if we could take the simple things in life and put them into the big picture where the things are a big deal, it's learning about one another. It's learning about my relationship with God. When I get an answer to prayer, whether it's the smallest thing in my life or the most earth-shattering thing that changes everything, I'm giving God glory like he rose from the dead yesterday for me, right? The big things, the little things, because it's building trust, it's building relationship, it's getting to that other side. So Jesus is telling them, guys, get to the other side.
Right.
Get to the other side. And then what does he do? He draws them close. He says, come over here, have breakfast with me. Come eat. I cooked something. I made it for you. You've been out there. You've been working. Come in, and he pulls them close. Relationship is about being close with one another.
That's right.
You're not just a couple. It's not just my +1. It's not just that girl over there. Even if you're dating somebody, you want to be close to that person, to get to know them. Because if you can't get to know them and build trust like that when times are great, then how can you get to the other side when you're facing a challenge?
That's good.
It's a really tough place to be in. So you have to celebrate those moments and constantly be working on your life. Now, I know we're talking 15 years. This August is what we will have been married. And some of you have been married for 30 plus years. Right. So you got a whole lot of experience on me and on Joshua. But guess what? The principle is the same.
That's right. That's right.
Right. Keep working, keep growing, keep getting to the other side. I bet if we were to ask this wonderful couple back here that's been married for almost 60 years, they would say probably daily there's a get to the other side.
That's right.
Right? Because it's called life.
Yeah.
Come on, say it with me. Life. Right? There are always things that we are going to be facing. But I love that Jesus pulls them close. He pulls them close and he says, hey, let's get to know one another. Let's have breakfast. Let's spend time. When you read on in that, Jesus starts talking to Peter, and Joshua preached an amazing message a few weeks ago where he said Jesus was reprogramming him. How many of you heard that? When he was around the fire, he denies Jesus. Then it says this is the third time Jesus has appeared to them. I think that number 3 is so significant that he pulls Peter in and he starts talking to him in threes again. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? He's building that relationship. He's helping Peter to get to the other side. When God starts directing you, starts talking into your life as an individual, because before you were ever married, before you were ever a plus one, you were a you.
That's right.
And I said this in youth church the other night. We were talking about relationship because of Valentine's Day, that I'm not complete because I married Joshua. And Joshua's not complete because he married me.
Right.
We love one another, and God added us to each other's lives, but I am complete in Jesus Christ.
That's right. That's good.
And because of who he made me and he made Joshua, we're able to have relationship together. Amen. And Jesus was telling Peter, you got to get confident in you. Yeah. You got to get to the other side, to the right side for you, before you can ever do what I have called you to do. And relationship and marriage, listen, your calling, you may have things in your heart that you want to do, dreams that you want to do, but get to the other side in that relationship. What did your spouse want to do? How has God called the two of you to work together, not just in your career, but in ministry? Right. Because I promise there's something that God's called you to do. There's a direction that he has called you to go in that marriage. And with your entire family, once you start having children, disappointment, listen to this, leads to default. Peter got disappointed, and so what does he do? He goes back to fishing.
What was comfortable, that's right.
He went back to what was comfortable. And it's really easy in life when we face challenges and things that we're trying to get to the other side, but we're not there yet, to go back and say, man, I'm just going to go back to the way it was 5 years ago.
That's right.
I'm going to go back to the way it was 10 years ago. But guess what? You're not the same you. Yeah. And your plus one's not the same either. Right. So you're not going to find that satisfaction in what used to be.
That's it.
Because it's no longer the same. And I promise, I started thinking about this story. I don't think Peter, obviously he wasn't catching fish, but I don't think there was satisfaction in him just going back to what was comfortable. No. He was disappointed. He was hurt. He was heartbroken at what had happened with Jesus, seeing things around not, just hitting the same way that they were before. He's disappointed. And what happens? In Luke 5, when Jesus finds Simon Peter, what was he doing? He was preaching. Push off from a little from the land. Throw out your nets for a great catch. How many of you read this story before? No longer will you catch fish, you're going to catch men. He calls them. And what happens here? He's out fishing unsuccessfully. That's right. And what does Jesus say? Get on the right side, man. We've been here before. Yeah. We've done this before. You were just disappointed and you went back to something you thought was comfortable, but guess what? At my word, I'm about to change your entire situation again. If you will just get to the other side. Get to the other side. Look at your neighbor and tell him, get to the other side.
So what do? We got to get to the other side. If you're taking notes, we're going to give you 3 points. Point number one, the first thing you got to do, you got to make a decision, watch this, to fight for us. We're going to fight for us. In everything we do, everything we are, because watch this, you've got to, in a marriage, in a relationship, you've got to let go of your individuality. You got to let go of who you are. Why? There's no I in team, but watch this, but there is a me. Yeah. Okay? So when we got married, I let go of me. Not that I still don't take care of me, not that I still don't focus on me, but watch this. My main focus is no longer on me. My main focus is on us. And then my focus is on me. Amen. So you see, I put us ahead of me. So there are things I want to do, but if it doesn't work with what we want to do, then what I want to do takes second base. Because I'm not going to put me in front of us. Yeah. And so watch that. I don't do that in any argument either. In any disagreement, in anything that we do, we don't pit our children against the other spouse. I don't go to my kids and say, well, Mom, man, she's terrible. Mom is a horrible human being. And man, you ought to go tell Mom, you're a bad person. And don't tell her Dad said that. Like, we don't do that. Yeah. I tell my kids to go tell their mom how much they love her and how great she is and how pretty she looks first thing in the morning. Like, that's the stuff I tell my kids. I want my kids to think their mom hung the moon. I want them to love her so much and let them know that I love her so much. Yeah. Watch, because I'm fighting for us in everything we do. When we have an argument, I don't look for my win. I look for how we can win. Yeah. Now, we don't argue a lot. That's something, again, we made a decision we weren't going to do. We weren't going to have drag-out fights. We weren't going to scream at each other and yell at each other. And I can count on one hand the number of times we've raised our voices to one another, if that. We just don't do it. We made a decision we weren't going to. It doesn't mean we don't want to. It doesn't mean that sometimes, I've left the room. or got in my car and drove away for a few minutes so that I didn't have to raise my voice.
You came back with coffee, though, so everything was good.
But you know, we just made a decision. We weren't going to let it get to that place because, watch, we're fighting for us. I'm not going to fight for me. I'm not looking for the way I can win because there are certain words, there are certain things I could say in every argument that would give me the win. That would put her into a place that it would hurt her and it would be a bad place for her. But you know what? How does that make us win? Yeah. Me winning an argument, me winning a fight, that doesn't help our relationship. It doesn't help our future. And so what we do, though, we see, all of us, we see these fantasy relationships and we see these people that look like everything is perfect and everything is great. And we look at them and we say, man, they must never raise their voice and they must never have an argument and they must agree about everything. Let's get real. Nobody agrees about everything. Yeah. Nobody. I don't care who you are. You never agree about everything. Because I think Pastor said it and Oral Roberts might have told him that if two of us, if we agree on the exact same thing all the time, one of us isn't necessary. I don't need you if we're going to agree on everything. Now, we made a decision. We were going to agree to disagree on some things. We just made that decision. And if we disagree, then we disagree, and we'll figure out how to get it into agreement. Because watch, relationships are work. They're work, man. It's not easy. I wish it was. I wish that you could say, oh man, it's a piece of cake. If it was a piece of cake, nobody would ever get a divorce. They're work. Sometimes in our relationship, we've gone through hell. But guess what? We didn't stop there. Yeah. We didn't camp out in it. We kept pressing. We kept fighting. We fought for one another, not against one another. We fought for one another. There's certain things we don't say. We don't say the word hate. In our household, we don't say the word hate. Even if we're talking about other stuff, we don't say it. We don't say, I hate whatever, Domino's pizza, which isn't true. I love Domino's, but like we don't say it. We don't say the word divorce in our house. Just don't say it. We don't joke about it. We don't joke when she says something and I joke, I'm going to get a divorce from you if you say that again. We don't say that. Why? Because I'm not going to give the devil any foothold in our marriage. I'm not going to let him have any place where he can work a wedge in and try and figure something out. Because we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. You see, Jesus died and he rose from the grave. And look, Jesus went through hell and he came to his disciples who were fishing. And I love it because they weren't looking for him. They weren't looking for Jesus. He just rose from the dead. He'd just seen him in Jerusalem and they left the place he told them to stay. And they left and Jesus shows up, watch this, looking for them. I love it that Jesus looks for his disciples while they're doing their own thing. He took the first step. Did he have to? No. Did he want to? Yes. Why? Because he fights for us when we're not fighting for him. Jesus always fights for us. Watch, we fight together. In everything we do, we fight together. Watch, we're not fighting, we're fighting for us. In every decision we make. So we did this. Watch, I got this ping pong table here just to kind of show you. I'm a visual learner myself, so I want to just show you real quick kind of what I'm talking about, because me and Catherine, before we were married, we used to play ping pong against each other, but then we got married and we realized we couldn't compete against one another because both of us are extremely competitive, and we did it one time. We had some teenagers over to the house for a game night. And we were on opposite teams. We had boys versus girls. And if we ever got to the place where it was that close.
It was embarrassing. I was like, I can't be a youth pastor anymore.
If it was ever to that place. So we just made a decision. We're never going to compete against
So don't
one
ask
another.
us to come over for a girls versus guys game night. The answer is no. I'm not going to be there.
We play with each other because there's nobody better. That's the way it works. But watch this. If we're playing ping pong, right? Anybody ever play ping pong? Y'all know what I'm talking about? All right, so y'all play. At the beginning of the game, what do? You always start off and you're like, watch, P-I, oh my gosh. I mean, this isn't going to work if you're going to do it like that.
I'm sorry.
P-I-N, oh man. Look, we should have practiced.
We should have practiced.
So watch, you always do it. At the beginning of the game, you just hit the ball over, watch, because you spell out ping pong to see who gets to serve. But watch, this is how relationships ought to work. This is how a relationship ought to be. Because if we're in a relationship together, every shot that I hit, I'm setting her up to hit a good shot back to me. Because if we're in a relationship, I'm not playing against her, I'm playing with her. So if I hit a bad one, she sets it up better so I can hit a good one. And then I set it up. And now watch, we're playing with one another, not against one another. But so many times in marriage, what we do is, oh, see, there we go. One of us gets upset at the other one. And so instead of setting her up to hit a shot, I'm trying to hit around her. I'm trying to make her miss. Why? Because I'm trying to win the argument. I'm trying to be the winner in the argument. But the reality is God didn't call us to fight one another. He called us to fight for one another. I don't know if you got anything else you want to say.
So when we're fighting for each other, it's important to learn to listen, right? And not listening so that I can decide when I can interject my thoughts, but actually listening so that I'm paying attention to what the other person is saying, which is not always easy to do. Because you just want to say, if you're fighting against each other, you just want to be able to say what you need to say to get it off your chest. Anybody ever been there before? But if you're fighting for each other and you're trying to work a resolution when you have what I'm going to call that discussion, because if you're really fighting for each other, that's what you're looking for is an answer.
Right.
You're not looking to just fight and to keep it going and to say we just are going to disagree, right? If you get to that place where you really agree to disagree, then you found a resolution.
Yeah.
But if you're looking just to fight, then that's somebody who's not really listening. You're just silent until it's your turn to bark.
Right. That's right.
Right? So we have to be that person who is listening. That's the second thing that we were talking about. Let me get back to my notes here.
Yeah, number 2, you've got to listen. You've got to listen and really care what the person says. Not just listen to talk next, but listen because you actually care and you're actually bringing it in so that you can have a conversation, not a shouting match.
Well, and in this story in John 21, Peter has done everything wrong concerning Jesus and his relationship with him. And Jesus told him before it ever happened, this is what you're going to do, right? We've all read the story before. So if anybody has the right to be upset, it's Jesus at Peter. But what does he do? He fixes a meal for him,
Right.
pulls him aside, not the other disciples, but Peter, and starts talking to him and working on Peter so he can get to the other side. He listens to what he's going to say, listens to what his replies are, and then helps him and heals him and moves him on, reprograms him from that place of pain and puts him back in a place where he can be used and get back into his calling.
Yeah.
And when you're in a relationship, you have to have that kind of banter back and forth, right? If you're in that discussion mode, that I'm looking for a resolution and I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to find the answer, and then watch, move on.
That's right.
Move on. Don't make it the thing that you go back to the next time you have a disagreement,
That's a good
where
word.
you pile
That's a
on
good word.
6
That's
months
right.
worth of pain and just unload on somebody, right? You never resolve anything like that. That's when you need to go back in prayer and say, Jesus, what am I needing to get complete in my life so that I don't hurt somebody else? Right? That's part of the listening too, is not just listening to my spouse, but listen to what God is saying.
Right.
What's he talking to you about? How's he directing your life? Sir, as the head of your house, how is he speaking to you about your relationship, about what your family is supposed to be doing in God's house as part of the kingdom of God? Ma'am, how is God talking to you about submitting? We take that as like a slight, in a woman power world that we live in, which I'm all about being a strong woman. But when God adds you to that man, your strengths now are still a strength, but they are submitted in a different way. And if you can't understand that, if you haven't matured enough to understand that yet, you just need to study a little more in the Word and fall in love and use this word, watch, trust.
Yeah, that's good.
That's kind of a difficult word sometimes, to trust that what my spouse is doing and how he is leading my house, especially if you're a single parent who's getting into a relationship now, where you've raised children for a few years and you have worked hard. Now you have to learn to trust and to be submitted. That's a big change and a big step, but it's part of that relationship. And if you keep Jesus, ma'am, as number one in your life, then really it's going to be the easiest adjustment and the
Right.
most peaceful turn of a page you've ever had in your life, because you found out you're complete in God, and He has added you to something that is family and that is beautiful and that is actually something that is very holy, and it's covenant.
That's good.
Is everybody following what I'm saying tonight? That kind of relationship.
That's good. Yeah, and I love it because Jesus had sympathy with Peter. Because she was talking about how he came to Peter, and if anybody had the right to be upset at Peter, it was Jesus. Because Peter was the only one that denied him. The others deserted him, but Peter denied him. And Jesus could have been angry, but I love it because he had sympathy, but not just sympathy, he had empathy. And empathy is not a word that we use a whole lot. It's not a word that we talk about and use, but empathy is not, like sympathy says, oh, it must be bad. Empathy says, I know it's bad because I feel it with you. And Jesus, the Bible says in the book of Hebrews, the book of Hebrews says that God is not the kind of God that looks down on us and says, man, it must be tough down there. He is the God who stepped into the weakness of a man. He stepped in, and not into like a 30-year-old rocked up version of a man. He stepped into a baby, the weakest, most innocent thing, the weakest thing on the earth, that is innocent and helpless, and he stepped into the form of a child and had to be raised and had to be trained. And Jesus felt our pain, and he felt our sin, and on a cross he felt our sickness and our disgust and our grief and our guilt, and he felt it all on himself. And watch, empathy leads to compassion, compassion to forgiveness, and forgiveness to reconciliation. And that's what God has called us to. He's called us to be reconciled. And so watch, when you're in a relationship with somebody, you're in a relationship with your children or your spouse, oftentimes we have to think not what they did, but why they did it. If they've done something that hurts you, something that you didn't understand, instead of focusing on the what, focus on the why. Put yourself in their shoes for a moment, because sometimes Catherine makes decisions that I don't understand why she makes them, but the second that I step out of who I am and step for a moment in her shoes and wonder why she made the decision she did, I realize how it's the best decision. I realize how it's the right decision, the one that needed to be done, because I had to get away from the what and focus on the why. And that's empathy. That is getting to the other side in how we see things and how we perceive things.
So we've got to, this is number 3. We got to be willing to get over ourselves. Get over ourselves. I love this thought, is that when Jesus is talking to them about getting to the right side, coming up on the shore, all of that, he's talking about his love for them. The fact that he's speaking into their situation, he knows where they are, he finds where they are, he knows he's going to have breakfast with them. All of that was about his love for them. And when all of a sudden it says they knew it was the Lord, and they start to realize, wow, his love is so great. Look what he's still doing for us. Right. In relationship, it's the same way. When you're in love with that person, you know, we think that love, we just came through Valentine's Day, right? And it's like chocolates and roses and goosebumps, right? It's the feels. That's what Valentine's Day is all about. But love is so much more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Love is way beyond that. Love, you find out, is something that is so deep that you really can't put words to. Yeah. It's commitment.
That's good.
It's loyalty. It's being there. It's trustworthiness. It's serving that other person in your life and understanding that it's okay to do that. Right. That I'm not a doormat, right? But this is the right thing for me to do, that I am in love. And so if they ask me to go get them coffee 10 times, guess what? They must need 10 cups of coffee. So I need to get out of my own way and just help. Right. You know, we've got 3 kids. Pastor referenced changing 3 diapers at the same time. Never happened. That first one was potty trained. I was like, I'm not doing no 3 diapers. I'm not lining them up on the bed. I was looking at those triplet videos. Like, this can't be me. I'm not doing this, right? But the other day we were at the house. And I'm at a place right now where most of the days I'm at home with the kids, and I work from home and come up to the office sometimes, but I get to spend time with the children until they go to school, which is wonderful. And so Joshua had just come home. He hadn't been home long, and one of the boys had like dropped a bomb, right? I was like, man, I've been with these sweet little babies all day because the boys are working on that potty training. Can I get an amen? And I was like, hey, Maverick, I don't remember who it was, Maverick. I was like, hey, Maverick has a dirty diaper. and I don't want to change it. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't want to change it. Would you go change his diaper? And do you know what he said to me? Sure. And he went and changed his diaper for me, right? And it was awesome. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't a, you're the woman, you should be changing the diaper. It wasn't any of that, right? He didn't question me like, why? You haven't changed any diapers today? You need to go take care of your son, right? There wasn't any of that. He just said, okay. Because he got out of his own way of not wanting to. I promise it wasn't pretty. He got out of his way of not wanting to do it and probably thought, you know what? She's had a long day. Maybe there have been a whole lot of dirty diapers today and she just don't want to deal with this one. And just did it. And then we finished watching Seinfeld or Wheel of Fortune, whatever was on TV, right?
Sometimes y'all could have clapped when she said that. That would have been cool, but that's fine. If I'd have said it about her, you'd have been like, oh, Mother of the Year. But no, that's cool. Whatever. It doesn't hurt my feelings. You want me to just finish?
Yeah, let me say one more thing.
Right.
The other thing that Jesus said, and I'll be quick, and then we'll let Joshua wrap up. In Luke 5, and then here, they're out. He says, go out, launch out, cast your net, get on the right side. Can I just say in your relationship to launch out?
Yeah.
Don't be average, right? Don't do the thing that everybody does just because it's the popular thing to do. Do something different. Surprise her. Surprise him. Keep it, at 10 years. Do something that's exciting. At 12 years, at 13 years, at 20 years, right? You got there for a reason. Be that person, not because you want to be who you were yesterday, but because you're keeping that fresh and you're launching out and you're doing something that's new together, right? Whenever you have those children that graduate, what's next, right? Don't get depressed.
That's right.
Don't get sad. What's next? Right? If you haven't had children yet and then you have kids and you're like, oh my gosh, I can never go to the movies. Guess what? Find a babysitter and go to the movies, right? Launch out. That's a big deal.
That's good.
Do something different. Be that person that stays in love. Follow Jesus' words in your relationship. Come on, say it. Say, launch out.
Launch out. I love it. You've got to in relationships. And Peter, he was in a place where, think about it, these guys are in the boat and the guys ask him, did you catch anything? And they're like, man, I don't know about you, but if I'm blanked on a night of fishing and somebody asked me that, I'd be like, man, you mind your own business. Like that would be me. I'd tell them to mind their own business. But the reality is Peter didn't do that. He could have, he should have, but he said, man, look, I'll take your tip and we'll throw the nets. We'll take it. Because he said, I've been doing it my way for so long. And so many of us, we're our own worst enemy sometimes. That we're doing our own way so often that we get in our own way. But God didn't call us to do it our way. He called us to do it His way. Yeah. And there's got to be a place where we step back and say, God, I can't do it anymore by myself. I can't do this relationship by myself. I need help. Yeah. I need help, God. And so you go to God, or you go to a counselor, or you come to church, or you do something. Because look, failing should not be an option. In our marriage, failure's not an option. We're going to make it happen. We're going to work it out one way or the other. But failure's not an option. That's got to be in your mind. You have to say, I'm not going to fail. Yes. And you know what the good news is if you've had a marriage and maybe it ended in divorce, and so now you're in a place and you're like, oh man, I'm a failure. No, you're not. Because you can start today. You can start right now. There's no shame on you for making a mistake or going through a situation. Look, that's who you used to be. It's not who you are today. If you're in a bad spot, man, the devil is trying, he's trying to put shame on you. But we say shame off of you. Amen. Shame off your life. Shame away from you. God doesn't want there to be shame in your life. And I love it because Peter was full of shame and he was full of doubt and he was full of fear. And Jesus brought him aside. And 2 weeks ago, I spoke on this on the Sunday morning. If you can get the message, it's on the app, watch it. Because I don't want to preach the whole message, but watch. I love it because he brought him and he said, do you love me? And Peter said, I love you. Do you love me? I love you. Do you love me? He said. And Peter said, I love you. You know I love you. He asked him 3 times. Why? Because he denied him 3 times. Jesus was rewinding who Peter was, and he was reprogramming him. Saying, man, I know you made a mistake, but I don't care. I know you messed up, but I don't care. I know you messed up, but I don't care because that's who you were. It's not who you are.
To learn more, visit walterhallam.net. Here you'll find a list of resources to help you with your daily walk in Christ.